Hey moms, it's me, Queenie, and you are about to enjoy the Empowering Girl Mom Show. We're about to get started, so please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with your friends so that more moms know that we are here as a resource to support all of us in up-leveling motherhood. I look forward to joining you in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey moms, it's me, Queenie, and you are about to enjoy the Empowering Girl Mom Show. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of the Empowering Girl Mom Show. I'm your host, Queenie Brown, and I'm so excited about today's conversation. So, the Empowering Girl Mom Show is all about pouring into you. Over the next month, me and a group of experts are going to be sharing wisdom, insights, and tools and resources to help you become a better, more powerful mom. And so, your job is to just take it all in, embrace it, take good notes, make sure that you apply what you're learning every day, because by the end of this month, what we plan to do is lock arms the entire time, and all of us grow and rise and heal and stretch into who God created us to be together. So expect to be able to have a testimony to share at the end, and I expect to have one too. All of us are being enriched by this opportunity, and I'm so grateful that you're joining us. So today we are talking about radical self-leadership. And our speaker today is Miss Ali Mona. And she is an entrepreneur, a coach, and an advocate for moms raising daughters. She happens to have 4 of them. So I consider an expert at this point. And I can't wait to talk about radical self-leadership as a mom that inspires and challenges your daughter. Welcome, Ali
Mhm.
Mona, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Queenie. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited about this conversation. Many of us moms, we live our lives and we're kind of running, right? Most of us running through life. We're giving and giving and giving to everyone and
Mhm.
everywhere. But oftentimes we don't take a moment to pour back into ourselves. And because of that, we tend to find ourselves in places where we're depleted,
Sure.
overwhelmed. And then when you get to that depletion place, guess what breaks down? Your leadership, your
Yeah.
ability to hold to your own word to yourself, to your children, to whoever else you've given your word to, your ability to lead yourself through life. It just all gets compromised when in motherhood, just because of by virtue of the fact that we are overwhelmed and we're just giving so much. So I wanted to have the conversation and talk about the importance of self-leadership and what that looks like in your life.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit of background first about my family, because my family situation is quite unique.
Okay.
Um, I studied international business and management and Chinese actually as an undergrad. And so my junior year, I went to Beijing to study abroad, and that's where I met my husband. So Ron's from California, but we met in China. He was also studying there for a couple of months. And then flash forward 4 years, we got married, and I had been in China most of those 4 years. And I didn't want to move back to the US because it took me so long to acclimate to living abroad, especially in a place that is so foreign, like
Mm-mm.
Asia, right? And so my husband, who is Samoan, has a very tight knit family. And the idea of him getting married and leaving the family was very foreign at the time. Most of the time, Samoan families, someone's married, they're incorporated kind of into that family
Mm-hmm.
structure. And I knew that there was an element of having been apart and dating very long distance for 4 years. I knew that if I went and lived in San Diego, that I would have been kind of swallowed up by this culture that wasn't my own. And my marriage culture would have been swallowed up into a culture that wasn't our own.
Mm.
And so when he agreed to move over to Shanghai with me, I was shocked. But it was really the best thing that we could have done for our own family culture, because we're both American, but we have very distinct cultural identities as families. And so, flash forward a couple years, we had children very young. I got married at 24. Bree, my eldest, was born when I was 26, and she's almost 14. So I turned 40 in January. And 2 years later, JoJo came. 4 years later, Margie came. So I had three very healthy, very typical daughters. And then we met our daughter Grace through an adoption advocacy group. So Grace is Chinese, and we adopted Grace. Actually, tomorrow is the day 6 years ago that we
Wow.
finalized her adoption. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So she's only 6 weeks older than my biological youngest. And so she came home when she was 12 months and Margie was 11 months. So they've pretty much been raised as twins. And there's actually a term for it. Virtual twins is the
Interesting.
term for children who are not biological twins, but who are raised as twin siblings. Um, and so we were in Shanghai for 10 years together. It's where all of my girls were born. And then my husband got a job in the south of China. So we moved and we did 2018 to 2021 in the south of China by Hong Kong in a city called Shenzhen. And so radical self-leadership is a super important topic to me because we raised our girls outside of family support,
Mm,
right? We couldn't rely on blood family. And so we had to create family as expats.
mhm,
So I was in China for a total of 16 years. And then in 2021, um, we had to make the impossible decision to leave China because um, they were forcing medical,
mm.
how do I say this without, anyway, you know what I'm saying? They were
Say
forcing
it.
things medically
Right.
that
Mhm,
when my daughter, our little girl who we adopted, was born with half of a heart. So she
mm,
has congenital heart disease called hypoplastic left heart syndrome. The left ventricle did not um, develop in her mommy's womb.
mm,
And so her care team was like, don't risk it. We don't know enough yet. And so radical self leadership that extends to your children starts by being uncompromising in your values, right?
mm,
The reason that we left Shanghai is because the company that my husband was working at would not support our family in a way that we felt that they could have. So if you're not going to value my husband and his contribution, we're going to look elsewhere, right? Radical
mm,
self leadership. And I'll never forget when we were leaving Shenzhen, my oldest was 10 at the time, and we left in 3 weeks. So we went from thinking we were going to retire there in 2034 after all of our girls were done with school to making the decision and having everything packed and gone in 3 weeks. And so it was a
wow.
whirlwind. And I cried myself to sleep every night because I'm a pre-mourner. My husband is a post-mourner.
Mhm.
So I cried every night before we left, and he cried after we left, trying to figure
Yeah,
out like what we were going to do, right?
right.
And so we were doing all of our lasts, right? Our last trip to this favorite place, our last trip to this favorite restaurant. And it was one night we were going to our favorite restaurant, and we had to take two taxis home because, again, we're a big family. And I was with my eldest, and she was 10 at the time. And I could not control my sobbing. And I'm
Mhm,
not a big crier, but I could not control it. And my oldest says to me, Mommy, why are you so upset? I said, because baby, I don't know what's waiting for us, right? We're
mm,
currently sitting in Mexico. That's a whole other self-leadership story.
mhm,
Um, but I had never even vacationed in Mexico. I had never even been to Mexico. And here we are moving our kids sight unseen into a city we've never met, putting them in a local private school that has zero Spanish as a second language support, right? Uprooting everything and everybody. And I just was filled with doubt,
my
right?
goodness.
And she says to me, "This is how you know that you're doing something effective as a mom," right? She says to me, she puts her arm around me and she goes, "Mommy, do you remember when we left Shanghai and nobody wanted to leave, but we had to do it because we were sticking to our values of being valued as a family
Mm,
unit, right?"
mm,
She goes, "Do you remember how scary that was and how we didn't want to do it? And look at how amazing our life is down here."
mm.
She goes, "What makes you think that our life in Mexico isn't going to be even better than our life here?" My
Wow.
10-year-old, now you have an 11 and 8-year-old, right? So you can imagine
Yes.
that wisdom coming out of your child. And the only way they get that ability to lead is if you are leading the way and showing them
Yes.
what that radical self leadership looks like. And radical self-leadership as a mom, it's not crying in your bedroom and not letting your kids see, right? It's not
Right.
refusing to be vulnerable because you don't want your kids to think you're weak. It's being 100% authentic,
Yes.
saying you're scared when you're scared,
Mm-hmm.
saying you're confident when you're confident, right? Holding your word, right? Being a woman of your word and not
Yes.
using your words flippantly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I look back to that story often, to how choosing to lead yourself, one, impacts your life significantly, right? But also, if you are raising daughters and sons, but if you're raising little girls, showing them what moving forward looks like
Mm-hmm.
despite fear, uncertainty, doubt, all of those emotions that can stop us in our tracks.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Yeah,
Wow. I'm holding back tears, honestly. And I might cry, and it's
that's
okay if
okay.
I cry. I trust my tears. um, I'm holding back tears because just 3 years ago, I made the decision to leave my marriage, and uh, it was a 30-year marriage, and I was away from family in Atlanta, and I lived there for so long, and my girls, that's all they knew. And we had to make the decision to move home. And I didn't know where we were going to land. I didn't know how it was going to work. I didn't know, there was so many unknowns, and there are still so many unknowns. Um,
Yep.
but the fact that I picked up my own self and they watched me pack the house. They watched me hold on to my faith. They watched me pray and they watched me trust God, and they it was tough because it was a family breaking up.
Right.
Um but being here now in California, my girls are so much more adept to change. They know that change is okay. They know that things are actually better now. Mommy is
Mm,
more confident, just more peaceful. Mommy is more herself, and they know. One of my daughters, I hate to say it, but she says, "Mom, why did you wait so long to leave?" Like,
I know.
oh,
I
you
know.
know.
Yeah.
But it took me to find the courage in myself. And now they see that they can do it. If they're in a situation where they don't feel valued or they don't feel heard or they feel mistreated in any way, they know that there's something on the inside of them that they can stir up and move themselves out of that space. So
That's
I
right.
appreciate you sharing that story because I had not
Mhm.
ever considered it as radical self leadership. I
No.
didn't. No, I saw it as me running for my life. That's
But
just,
you
how I
and
saw it.
yes, and sure, and you may have been, but if
Right.
you look as a coach, I
Mhm.
would say there's nothing but radical self-leadership in that
Mm.
because you could have chosen to stay and you chose not to. And what your girls saw is mommy leading mommy and choosing mommy and them
Yeah.
over the comfort of a situation that wasn't ideal.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen to
And
that.
that takes an outrageous amount of courage and vulnerability and bravery to be
Mm.
able to make a decision like that. Because it's not just you, right? If the girls weren't there, you would have had a much easier decision. But the
Oh,
reality is,
yes.
the girls see that decision as positive because of who you
Yeah.
have led yourself to become
Mm.
after that choice.
Amen to that. And truth be told, I wouldn't be doing this show if I hadn't
Mm-mm,
left. I wouldn't.
mm-mm.
Yeah. So God has a way, right? He moves us right where he
Mhm.
needs us to be. So I'm grateful for that.
That's right.
So, what would you say to a woman who is where you were in the depths of that moment when you were bawling and trying to figure out what to do? What advice would you give to her in her moment of desperation to call on that self-leadership?
That's an excellent question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is to use your resources.
Mm,
So when my husband was giving up his work and I work online. And so literally we could go anywhere in the world.
Mhm.
Like if you said, okay, Queenie, you have to leave California, you have to leave America, but you can live anywhere. Like, what do you do? It's like choice
Right.
overload, right?
Right, right.
And so my resource at that time was my husband, because we were in it together, because he did not feel the same way about the choice that I was asking us to make.
Mm.
He did not see the red flags as I saw the red flags,
Mm.
and it was his career that he had to give up.
Oh my.
But he has learned to trust when God speaks to me
Mm.
that something's happening and it's worth listening to, right? God spoke to me about our daughter Grace. Yeah,
Mm.
God spoke to me about this move. Um, and our resources. So we started to do process of elimination. We had been away from home for so long that moving closer to the US was appealing to us.
Mhm.
But my kids have been raised as expats. And one of the things that we value as a family is intercultural experiences. And my family, my kids are half white, half Samoan, and a Chinese baby. It's like
Right.
we're already this conglomerate mix of the United Nations and our own little home. And
Right.
so moving back to the States, I didn't want my girls to lose what they fought so hard to gain in terms of a global perspective, the ability to make friends with anyone and everyone. I don't know if they would have lost that, but I think that
Mm.
they would have lost something. And I don't know exactly what it was because we've never lived in the States with our girls. And so I don't know what it
Mhm.
would have been, but I
Mhm.
felt that they had another opportunity ahead of them. So we've now been in Mexico for 3 years. And
Wow.
like I said, they moved to into this beautiful private school with no English support. And so the first 6 months were impossibly difficult, right? And talk about self leadership. You better believe that I better be in Spanish lessons if I'm
Mm.
asking my kids to do that, right? You better believe my kids take Chinese lessons 3 times a week now, too. You better believe that I better be keeping my Chinese up if I'm asking my children to do that, right? We have to be careful to not be asking anything of our children or anyone that we lead that we're unwilling to do ourselves because you erode your credibility, you erode your leadership, right?
Mm.
And so going back to your original question, I promise I'm gonna get back to it. I
It's
met a
okay.
woman in China 18 years ago, an
Mhm.
American. I was living up in this tiny little city with no other foreigners by the border of North Korea. This is before I got married. And I was walking down the road one day and I saw this white woman. And I was like, I think I'm seeing a ghost. Like I hadn't seen another foreigner in, at that point, 11 months. And I think I had had a horrible day at work. My boss was a beast, and I had had this wicked day. And I think my first words to her were like, "What are you doing here?" Like just complete shock and awe of
You're
seeing
doing
another
here.
foreigner, right?
Uh-huh.
So her name is Jenny, and Jenny's an American, and she has lived in this tiny little city of Guanajuato for the last 18 years. And so when I talk about using your resources, like when you're stuck, when you're on your knees, right, and you don't know what to do, you're not alone. One, if you have faith, you can always ask for wisdom, right? And guidance. But two, God puts people in our lives for moments now and for moments later. Like if I had never met Jenny, I would have never even known that this place was on a map, right? So I think about God in his view, time being timeless.
Mhm.
He put Jenny in my path 18 years ago so that we could have this life now. And
Mm.
I would have never thought, yes, we're going to be
Wow.
in Mexico for a decade. My littles, my girls are now almost 14, 12, and 2 8-year-olds. So I have 10 more years until
Ooh.
my littles graduate. And, they want to stay here because they love it. Right. And so Jenny, I said, well, let me call Jenny and see what it's like in Mexico right now, because it was still pandemic-y and we didn't know, what
Mhm.
rules and regulations and whatnot. Um, And so I called her and said, "Hey, how's Guanajuato doing? I think we're moving." And she was like, "What?" I was like, "I know. Can you help us find a house?" So she helped us find the house. She helped us, she picked us up at the airport. It was 6 of us and 26 suitcases,
Oh
all of
my
our belongings.
god. Oh my
Uh-huh.
god.
Yep, all of our suitcases, all of our belongings, 26 suitcases. Um, but she was an invaluable resource
Mm,
for us when we were making this move. Now, in order to have people in your life who can become resources for you, you have to do one thing. You have to pour into people,
mm,
right? The more you pour into people, the more people are willing to help you when you're in need.
mhm,
Let's go back to radical self leadership. Are your daughters watching you struggle alone, or are they watching you reach out for help? Right? Are your daughters watching you pour into the families in your community, or are they watching you watch Netflix on Friday and Saturday night instead? Nothing wrong with vegging out, right?
right.
But if you want to create an influence where people are willing to put their hand up to help you in a time of need, you have to give far more than you receive,
Mm,
far more. And what does that show your children? And what changes does that inspire in your children when they watch you extend yourself for those in need around you?
yeah,
Now, I don't mean overextend to where you've got nothing left. You have to, in order to give out, you have to be pouring into yourself,
right.
right? But part of radical self leadership is choosing yourself and your health, your mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional well being over that of everyone else, including the needs of your children.
Wow.
Which
Say
no
that
one wants to hear
again.
that,
Say that again.
right? You have to prioritize your holistic well being over the needs of your children
Mhm.
because you can't pour out of empty, right? And so one of the things, I'll give you an example. My kids love ramen noodles. They love it. I hate it because it's all toxic junk.
Right.
That I hate it, right? But you know what? If it's Friday night and I don't want to cook that chicken because I'm done, my husband doesn't want to cook that chicken because he's done, guess what? My kids are eating ramen so I can go
Mhm.
take a hot bath,
Right.
right? And so part of that radical self leadership is leading your own wellness so that you have extra for the kids. Like I think
Mm,
about it in terms of a battery, right? If you're at zero, you have to recharge before you can function for your kids. But our kids, they drain us. Our work, it drains us. Our relationships, they drain us. And
yes.
it's nobody's responsibility but yours and mine to fill my cup.
That's right.
That's
It's
it.
it's funny. I wrote about this in my book. I wrote a book called The Self-Love Lessons. 7
Mm,
lessons every woman must learn about herself and the power of womanhood. And I didn't write it because I had all the answers. That was God sitting me down saying, "Listen, you need to learn this, you need to learn this."
right, exactly, exactly.
But one of the concepts that he taught me was that we each are born with a love account, and our love
Mhm.
account balance is empty at birth. And at the beginning, mom and dad are pouring into our account and building the account balance up. Then the community pours in, builds the account balance up. And then we learn to build our account balance up. And then as we deal with trauma, drama, stuff in life, those withdrawals are made. And over time, if you deal with a lot of them, a lot of withdrawals happen. And if you
Right.
allow yourself to get depleted, it creates the chaos that we call womanhood, motherhood right now. Because
Yes.
we haven't learned how
Mhm.
to put back into our accounts. So the very thing that you're
Mhm.
saying, I fully and completely endorse and agree with because I've been the depleted mom. I've been there where my body was falling apart because I was totally empty, trying to put and still pouring, just giving to everybody from nothing, you
That's
know?
right.
And so,
Well, and
but
I don't I speak from experience because I spent when I was 30, I spent 6 months in bed and I
mhm,
couldn't get up. And I
mm,
had 4 tiny little girls, 6 and under, that I couldn't care for because I had spent the last 2 years driving myself into the ground with
mm,
businesses, with my marriage, with all the stuff,
yes,
and then 6 months in bed. And so that was my awakening
mhm,
of nobody's going to pour into me. And I'm not saying my husband doesn't pour in. It's not his job.
right, that part,
Just like it's not my job to make sure that he's 100%,
mhm,
right? If you're in a relationship and you bring 100% and they bring 100%,
It's overflow,
you're at
baby.
500%,
Right,
right?
right.
But if we're leaning like this, expecting somebody else to pick us up all the time,
Mm,
that's not self-leadership.
mm-mm.
That's dependency,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so there are moments now, because I struggle with an autoimmune disease. And so there's good seasons and there's hard seasons, right?
Me
That
too.
was the consequence of me choosing to pour out instead of learning how to pour in, pour out, pour in, pour out. My body just went nuts. Yeah.
Me too.
And so I speak from experience. Yeah, you too, right? So we
Mhm.
speak from experience of
Yeah.
like your body cannot sustain itself if you're not refilling it and refueling it. And it's nobody else's job. We cannot expect our children to fuel us. It's not their job,
That's right.
right? We just got a new puppy, 5-week-old puppy.
Oh boy.
I asked my husband to take it upstairs because it was biting my feet under the
Right.
table. Like it brings me joy,
Right.
but it's not its job to fill me up,
Right.
right? The same thing with our kids. And we expect the people in our world to do that for us, and it puts us in victim mentality. That's not radical self-leadership.
Mm.
And I'm in a season now, even where I said to my husband the other day, I'm like, man, I am not fueling my body. I am crashing. So I started tracking just what I'm eating on a day-to-day basis. Again, I use my Fitness Pal, put it in, right? Just put it in and see how many calories I'm eating. I realized that naturally I was eating like 800 to 900 calories a day.
Mm.
I don't have a huge appetite, but I was like, well, it's no wonder I'm feeling like crap because I
Mhm.
am not fueling my body with the right nutrients it needs to thrive,
Ooh, girl.
right? So that's an a really obvious example.
Mhm.
But if you look at where your heart is, if you look at where you are mentally, if you look at where you are emotionally, those are harder to pinpoint because you can't put that in an app and track a number.
Right.
But you know if you're constantly on edge because emotionally you haven't dealt with stuff,
Mhm.
right? Or you're in situations that consistently trigger you over and over and over again, right? You know it, but are you slowing down long enough to really take stock of where you are across all of these like holistic elements of your well-being? And so we've got the physical, right?
Mhm.
Are you sleeping
Mhm.
8 to 10 hours a night,
Mm.
right? Not 5, not 4, right? And if you don't sleep, let's say you're in bed for 8 or 9 hours, are you actually sleeping? If not, are you telling yourself, well, I just don't sleep? Or are you doing the work to look at different reasons why you're not sleeping, right? Are you taking that radical self-leadership to say, other people sleep, which means I can sleep?
Mhm. Mhm.
I didn't sleep for 10 years
Mhm.
until I said, enough is enough. My body's not going to recover from this if I don't sleep. And I spent 6 months sleep training myself like I sleep trained my babies.
Wow.
6 months it took me. Now I sleep like a baby because I took
Mm.
the time to do the research and to test my own body, radical self leadership,
Mm.
right? So that physical is easy. Mental, right? Are you sharp? Are you experiencing brain fog? What causes brain fog? Are you looking it up? Are you just saying, this, I guess this is the season I'm in,
Right. Resigning
right?
to it. Mhm.
Yeah. Are you resign is a perfect word. Are you resigning to it? Or are you going, I don't actually like living like this,
Mhm.
right? You did not resign to your marriage any longer.
Mm. You better say that.
You said, I'm doing something different,
Mhm.
right? And so you could have resigned to it, just like most of the women that I know that I coach have resigned to the fact that they don't feel as good as they used to. They don't have the energy. They're not sleeping well, right? They're all 40, 50, right? In that
Right,
transitional
right, right.
season. And it's like, oh my gosh, there are so many resources and things out there that you can do when you make the decision to stop resigning and to go for leadership instead, self-leadership
Mm.
instead.
Mm.
Right? So are you taking stock? You know, my kids, one of the things that gets me riled up is my kids fighting and being rude to each other.
Oh, girl, me too.
I,
That's a trigger for
I,
me.
I can't, I just
Right.
can't,
Right.
right? And man, now they're doing it in Spanish, and I can't understand them
Oh
well
my
enough to understand
God.
exactly what they're saying. So I'm like, you are rotten. Translate
Like, I
yourself.
heard
I
your
want to know what you
tone.
said to your sister. I know it was in the tone, you.
Right.
I know. So when my kids get at it, what do I do? Do I walk away and let them deal with it? Do I interject? Do I get super angry and scream? Right? Like those are litmus tests for where I am
Mm-hmm.
emotionally and mentally.
Ooh, girl.
Right? And so when I'm healthy, when I'm well watered and fed, when
Mm,
I'm well slept, I can engage in a constructive way. If I'm below 50, I'm walking away.
mm.
And I'm going to go put some music on. And if they verbally assault one another, I just have to not care
Oh
because it's not going
my.
to help for mommy to come in and start verbally bashing the two of them for
Well, that part. Yeah.
bashing themselves, right? So it's understanding where you are. If I can engage calmly and peacefully and be helpful, if I can display radical self leadership, I'm going
Mm,
to enter. If I can't, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to go put some music on and then I'm going to address it later on that evening when everyone's calm,
mm. Oh, that's a
right?
tough one. That's a tough one for me. And I'll tell you why. My daughters, they just are very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize, I talk a lot about how we parent our children sometimes through our own wounds. And that's a wound for me. I
Yeah.
watched my siblings brutalize one another growing up. And it's a trigger that's like, I can't allow you to hurt each other. You have to love each other. Here it is. I'm
Mm-hmm.
mother love, right? I'm trying to make everybody,
Yes.
let's just enjoy and love each other and pour in. And they're like, but you
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
there's something in me that is like, I cannot allow you to practice brutality. I cannot allow you to become good at hurting one another.
Yeah.
And, but the way that I'm doing it may or may not be supporting because I'm like, stop that screaming and treat them with
Yeah.
kindness. And, you know, so that's a great example though. My heart's in the right place, but if my mind isn't in the right place, I'm more part of the problem than the solution.
That's it.
And I get it. So
Yeah.
Lord help me.
I
And the
know.
rest of
I
y'all. If you
know.
other
And
moms
I
are
hate,
having
I
the same
know.
issue, let me know.
Well, my older sister was horrible to me.
Hmm.
And today we have very little relationship.
Yeah, me
So when
too.
when they start at it, my trigger fear is that they're going to drive a wedge in their relationship.
Me too. Yeah.
That's the fear.
Yeah.
And then I think, okay, what I've worked a lot on this because now they're all getting big. They're
Hmm.
just all getting big when they loved each other to pieces when they were tiny, right?
Right.
But now they're getting big. So it just is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, I've worked a lot on this because my response was not helpful because it was out of fear,
Yeah, mine too.
not out of love, right? And so when I can walk away and I can, let them do the relationship management piece on their own, when everyone's calm and I can come back in and say, "Hey, was that effective?" One of the things we
Mm-hmm.
talk about a lot, and this would be important for I think your audience too, is choosing relationship over being right,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what Jesus did.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Jesus didn't come in on his high horse saying, I'm right, you're wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? He chose to steward us into relationship with him
Mm-hmm.
so that we could uncover our own shortcomings, right? And so that's with my big girls, especially choosing relationship over being right. My girls take turns doing dishes every day. Dishes cause more strife in my house than anything else. Dishes. I'm like, never mind, I'll just do them. And I'm like,
Right.
no, no, I will not be afraid of my children because I'm afraid
Right.
of them fighting, right? Like I will not fear my children. They will still do the dishes, right?
I will not
Um,
fear my kids. I will not
I
fear
will
my
not fear my
kids.
kids. Right? How many times have you been like, hey,
Right.
come on down and help me do this. And it's like,
The way.
it's like, nope, I will not fear that response. I will address it calmly, right?
Right.
Do not fear kids. So, yeah. And so dishes, I'll tell you. And just yesterday, my second was, it was her dishes day, and my oldest was like, oh, hey. She was already crying because she was exhausted doing the dishes. And my oldest is like, oh, hey, the spoon's a little dirty still. And JoJo just lost it.
Oh my gosh.
And I pulled Bree, my eldest, aside, and I said, yo, timing is everything. I'm like, she's sitting there sobbing, doing the dishes in the first place, and you just went and like took a knife and like stabbed her in the gut.
Right.
I was like, relationship over being right. Support her, give her kind words as she's sucking it up and doing her job. Do not pour salt on the wound.
Yes.
But it was dirty, mom. I'm like, but I don't care.
Right.
Relationship over being right.
Mm.
Right.
That's a
And
great
so,
lesson.
yeah. And one of the overarching, that relationship over being right is kind of the overarching philosophy,
Mhm.
the overarching guideposts that Ron and I use in all of our parenting. Because when our girls were little, we were challenged to really come up with a, like, what's the overarching goal? Like, are we trying to raise athletes? Are we trying to raise girls that get full ride scholarships into university? Are we trying to raise, like, what's that guiding light? None of that stuff
Mm.
matters to us. What matters to us is that when my girls are out of the home and they have the choice to not come home, we want them to want to come home.
Mhm.
So, what sort of environment then, if we reverse engineer that, what sort of environment then would repel them from coming home? Well, that would be, it's not safe. Mommy and daddy are always arguing, you know, pick it, right?
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
what
Right.
would prevent them from wanting to come home?
Right.
Us ignoring them, us not making time for them.
Right.
And then you craft your family culture to do the opposite,
Mm.
right? So that means that they need to be safe. They need to feel accepted for exactly who they are, not who we want them to be,
Mhm.
right? They need to have a good relationship with their sisters. We need to make time for them so that they're seen and heard, right? We need to support them in the things that they want to do, right? All of those things that eventually, when they're out of the house, they don't have to come home, Queenie. Your girls are going to not have to come home one day,
Yeah. That's a
right?
tough one. Yeah.
So, how are we parenting? What family culture are we creating so that they want to come home?
Mhm.
And I see this in in my husband's culture. Any chance, there's 5 siblings. He's the oldest of 5. Any chance they can get together, they're there.
Wow.
All of them. And
Wow.
it's like, I don't have that
Yeah.
in my family culture, but I want it for my girls because I see the
Yeah.
power in it
Mhm.
in my husband's family.
Yeah. Me
Yeah.
too. Me too.
Yeah.
I love
So
that.
that radical self leadership, Queenie, it goes throughout every element of your mothering journey, right?
Mhm.
Are you leading yourself, and are your kids watching you lead yourself,
Mhm.
right? Are they watching you take that hot bath because you had a hard day and you just need a little bit of alone time,
Mm.
right? Or are they watching you still in the kitchen cooking that food, but being miserable about it? And
Mhm.
like that's me, right?
That's
If I'm
me
doing
too.
something that I don't want to do, then I'm over there being like, you ungrateful little things,
Tell the truth, right?
right? Or I can say, you know what? We're having ramen tonight. I'm gonna go take a bath. I'll come out when I'm human.
Mhm. Right. I have
That's what I
transformed.
say to my girls. I'm gonna go over there and I'm gonna come out when I'm feeling human.
Uh-huh.
Because that gives permission for our children to feel big feelings
Yes.
and manage them and then be human again. It normalizes big emotion,
I love that.
right?
I love that. Wow. This has been so rich. If you've been blessed by anything that Miss Ali
Mm.
Mona has been sharing, make sure you leave a note in the comments for us. If you have any questions for her, put them in the
Mm.
comments as well, because we're going to be at the end of the month, Miss Ali. I hadn't mentioned this to you, but on May 30th, if you are
Mm.
available, we're going to have a speakers roundtable where the audience will have an opportunity to ask the speakers questions live. So we're looking forward
So
to that.
fun. What time is
Yeah,
that on the 30th?
1 p.m. Pacific time on the 30th. Yeah.
All right. That's my 2 p.m. I'll be there.
Perfect, perfect. So, do you have any final words that you want to share with moms that would help them to jumpstart their radical leadership journey, radical self leadership journey?
Yeah, I think it's paying attention, Queenie, to where you have silenced your own voice. Where have you silenced your own needs? Where have you ignored either the Holy Spirit, if that's what you believe, or that tiny little voice that you don't know where it comes from, but it's there, right? Like, where have you, I just got chills. Where are you no longer listening to yourself because you're overextending for everybody else?
Mm,
That's low hanging fruit along the journey of radical self leadership. It doesn't mean it's easy, right? It doesn't mean that undoing a harmful dance that you've had in a marriage relationship. This was what my husband and I dealt with in the last couple of years. We were in a dance that was no longer serving either one of us. Undoing that dance meant my husband spending a couple months in the States separated because we couldn't have done the healing in the
mm-hmm,
same space. It
mm-hmm,
was an impossibly difficult choice.
mm-hmm,
It was low hanging fruit, meaning I knew it was the cause of a lot of things that were going on in my body. Doesn't mean it's easy,
right.
right? And so just start to pay attention. If you don't know what they are, if you don't know where you're lacking self-leadership, pay attention to what you're silencing and pay attention to your own word that you're not staying true to.
Mm, wow.
That would give you, and journal it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm,
I'm not a
mm-hmm,
massive journaler, but writing things down as you're going through this journey of radical self leadership
mm-hmm,
as a mom, I think writing some notes down as they come to you,
mm-hmm,
right? I am famous for keeping a notebook by my bed because I dream,
mm-hmm. Me
but I
too.
always forget,
Mm-hmm,
right? So I wake up and I write it down so I can
right.
remember.
Mm-hmm,
Um, God will speak to you and show you if you ask Him, right? And you're open to, and it's interesting because I think that all mothers are leaders in some capacity,
absolutely. Mm-hmm,
right? And we're warriors, like the quote that I gave you.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that.
Um, but along the way, life interrupts our confidence in that voice.
Mm,
And so it takes time and maybe some supportive mentorship,
mm-hmm,
right? Like, you don't have to do this alone, right? Reach out to your resources, even if it's a girlfriend, and you just say, hey, I need accountability on this,
mm-hmm,
right? Can you ask me? It's Monday. Can you ask me on Friday if I've done any work on this,
mm-hmm,
right? Get yourself some accountability because we can't grow alone,
mm-hmm.
right? Or it's more difficult and way not as fun, way less
Mhm.
fun
Right,
to do
right.
it, right? To do the work in community is really enriching
It
because you
is.
grow so much by
That's
watching
right.
other women's journeys. So yeah, I think those were my final words for you, Queenie.
Okay. There was one other thing that you said early on that I wanted to make mention of.
Mm,
You said that you, as a family, you hold strong to your values. And I
mm,
think that that would be a great exercise for all of us to engage in is identify what are your family values? What is it that you value as a family? What is it that you're teaching your children that you value by your actions, by your
mhm,
example? And
mhm.
and help them identify that their behaviors are in alignment with the values or not in alignment. I
That's
think
it.
that's going to be key. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time today, make sure you get a notebook that you can use, a
Mhm,
spiral notebook for this entire journey, because every single day our speakers are dropping so much wisdom. And our goal here is to be able to apply it every day. Don't just take it in and let it wash over you. Apply
mhm.
it. Look at what changes can I make in my life? What things did she say that I can absorb and integrate into my daily routines, what in my thought processes? What statements can I say differently to my kids? That's one of the things that I live with a teacher, and I've had this exposure to a lot more teachers recently. And I listen to the language that they use when they're talking to kids. It's like a foreign language, but the
Yeah,
kids
right?
understand it.
Yes.
Like crisscross applesauce, hands in your lap, and the kids just, like, what the heck is that?
Yes.
It
Okay,
works.
there's a fabulous book, Queenie. If you
Oh,
haven't read it yet, you should. How
okay.
to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is brilliant. A friend of mine who's a youth pastor gave it to me when my eldest was born. And I remember being like, she's she's literally a day old. Like, what in the world? We're not talking or listening for a long time. And she goes,
Right.
just read it.
Mm,
And I have read it and reread it and read it and reread it because it's every
mm.
stage and it's
Wow.
brilliant. Queenie, how to
Wow.
talk so kids will listen and listen so kids will talk.
I will do that. I will do that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it'll help this work that we're doing completely. So,
Yeah.
wow. All right.
And one more thing that you said
Yes.
about your values,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know what your family values, I encourage you to look at your budget. Where are you
Ooh.
spending your money? Right. And so I'll give you some examples. We value health. We have a child who is compromised, right?
Mm-hmm.
Her entire system is compromised because of her heart.
Mm-hmm.
We value health. That means that my money's not spent in restaurants, right?
Mm-hmm.
We value activity, which means my kids are in gymnastics a couple times a week, right? We spend our money in gymnastics. We value cultural and linguistic fluency, right? So we live in Mexico and my kids take Chinese classes during the week. So when you can align your spending with your values, then you know you've got it,
Wow. That's big right
right?
there.
So if you value travel and experiences, I would expect to see in your budget money for travel and experiences.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, so that's just one little. When you said that, I was like, ooh, because
I'm so glad you.
some of the people that I coach are like, I don't know what I value. Let's look at your budget,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like somebody who values health, they're buying whole foods, they're buying supplements, they're doing the time on research to identify, right? We spend time just like we
Mm-hmm.
spend money,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a currency, right? And so look at how you spend your time, look at how you spend your resources, and then we can see what you actually value. Because a lot of times there's a gap between what I say I value and how that's showing up in my life
Absolutely.
if we're not in alignment.
That's absolutely. And most of us are not because we're running too fast.
We're
We're
running
trying
too
to take
fast.
care of everyone else. Yeah,
Yeah,
we fell off the plate years ago. So
of course. And this is not me doing this. This is me doing this.
right. This whole experience, trust and believe when I tell you this, the Empowering Girl Mom Show is about us all doing this
Yeah.
because we can't change anybody but ourselves. And if we don't like the result we're getting it from our children and our families, or even if we do and we want to see it improve, then this is how we
Mm,
fix it. We got to start looking in the mirror. We have to start
this
being
one.
honest with ourselves. We have to just learn how to love the transformation that is happening within us and become a part of it. Lead the transformation. So I
Radical
am so,
self-leadership.
yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. I'm so grateful that we had this conversation. Would I know that every speaker has been offering a free gift to our audience? Is there something you would like to offer as well?
Oh, what do I have for free? Well, what I could offer is if you're interested in coaching or you just want to, if you're just stuck in some area, I could do a 30-minute free coaching call.
Okay.
And I will get you a link to that.
All right. Sounds good to me.
Specific to you, yeah. Because
Okay.
if you and you would use that, so who's the type of person that would use that? If there's something in your world that you feel super stuck on. So one of my top strengths is strategic strategy. Like I just have this wicked strategic brain. My clients say that I can find 100 ways out of a paper bag for you, which is true. Like stuck does not enter into my realm
I love it.
ever. And so if you're feeling stuck and you want to have a conversation to just get the next couple of steps,
Mm-hmm.
then that would be the type of person that would benefit from that sort of a coaching call.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Allie. I've been,
Of
I
course.
just, this has been a great, rich conversation. I've learned so much, and I'm sure that it has blessed our audience. For those of you, again, who have comments or questions for Allie Mona, please make sure you put them in the comments, and we're going to share your link as well. And we just
Yes.
want to say thank you again for joining us. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insights, and we appreciate it. And we look forward to working together again. I'm sure there'll be plenty more opportunities for us to connect and share
Absolutely.
as well. So
So
thank you
thank you
so
for the
much.
work that you're doing, Queenie. It matters. You know, the work you're doing matters.
Wow. I
You're
appreciate you
making an
saying that.
impact. So thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. And it's all for God's glory, right? We get to heal
Right.
together, and I'm grateful for that. Okay. Well, thank you all for watching another episode of the Empowering Girl Mom Show. Be sure to take your notes, apply what you've learned, take whatever nuggets that you can use, and decide how you're going to see it manifest in your life. And then be
Mhm.
prepared for the transformation, because I want to hear all about the testimony at the end.
Yes.
All right. Thank you again. And I'll see you on the next episode. Take good care. I'm Queenie Brown. See you soon. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Wow, today's conversation was a bit deep, and honestly, I needed to hear it today myself. So I just wanted to remind you that when we begin our heart healing, when we decide to turn that mirror around and focus on the broken parts inside of us, the parts that have been wounded, the parts that we are holding, maybe some resentment or unforgiveness, or maybe there are parts that you've never even acknowledged, or wounds that you just kind of tucked under the rug. We've talked about that before, right? As moms, many of us don't have time to do heart healing. And honestly, we are the very first generation to even begin to think about healing our hearts, to think about going into therapy or getting coaching or getting support in the areas where we need the support. And the truth is, moms, we get to have support. And so I felt led over the last couple of weeks and months to put together a beautiful program. It's called the Mother Love Immersion. It is a 6-week heart healing online retreat for moms, and it's designed to take us under that rug and just to begin that heart healing process in a safe, loving container where we can together journey through the pain, but not with the intention to stay there. The intent is for us to go there so we can be healed from it. I have learned in my own journey that sometimes you got to feel it in order to heal it. And so if you have not allowed yourself to feel the pain of whatever it is that you went through, and you've not allowed yourself to really just go there, it's time, because if you don't, it'll continue to bleed into your relationship with your children. It'll bleed into your relationship with money, with your love relationship. It bleeds into every part of your life. And so we have to decide to begin our heart healing journey. And this mother love immersion is a light introduction. It's not going to be a deep dive, because a lot of us have wounds that have just been there for so long. And the intent, again, is for us to learn how to process through it. And so I want to invite you, if you are ready to begin your heart healing journey, to put "I'm ready" in the comments. And I would love to have a conversation with you to talk to you about the Mother Love Immersion and what it can do for you and how it can transform you. And let this summer be the last summer that you carry the baggage. Let this be the last summer that you go without learning how to walk through your own heart healing process. And let this be the summer that you learn the skills to be able to support your daughter or daughters in healing their own hearts, because they're watching us, moms. They're seeing how we deal with life. They're watching us tuck things under the rug when we've been violated or mistreated or spoken to in a way that was inappropriate, or even on the job. We tend to take things in as women, and we don't know how to push them back out. So let me help you walk through that journey, and we can do it together. Again, put "I'm ready" in the comments, and I will be happy to share with you more about the Mother Love Immersion, which again is a 6-week heart healing online retreat for moms. And it's, of course, not just open to moms, but if you're a woman and you're not a mom yet, you definitely are still welcome. But specifically, I want to target moms, because what we're doing inside of motherhood is a reflection of the pain that we're carrying inside of our own hearts. So we get to heal that. We get to walk through that process, learn a new skill set, and be able to model and share that with our daughters. All right. So if you're ready to begin your own heart healing journey, put I'm ready in the comments, and I'll be sure to let you know more about the Mother Love Immersion. Okay. All right. Y'all be blessed. Thank you so very much. Yes, you get to process and learn how to move through your healing. It is the most important lesson and skill set that you can learn, because it's really, when you really think about it, our mother line, the wounds that your grandmother carried, she passed on to your mom, even if she didn't want to. Epigenetically, your mom was in her mother's womb when her mother was dealing with whatever trauma that she went through, and likewise, you were in your mother's womb when your mom was in the womb. Think about that. When we're born, we have all the eggs we'll ever carry. And so oftentimes we are carrying the woundedness from the past generations. So let's be deliberate about making sure that our next generation doesn't get that from us. And if they do, let's learn how to unravel it so that they'll know how to do that for their next generation as well. This is deep heart healing work, ladies, moms, and it's necessary for us to be able to up level and be who we've been called to be. So I'm grateful that you joined us. Thank you so much. Again, go to www.empoweringgirlmoms.com to learn more about this show. Catch all the replays. We're going to be replaying a lot of the interviews this week because they were so impactful. And in case you missed it, we want to give you one last opportunity to catch them. All right. Thank you so much again for joining. I'm Queenie Brown, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. You be blessed and take good care. Bye bye.